Meet the Robinsons is one of the most underrated movies of all time and is one of my absolute favorite Disney movies of all time, with its fascinating and creative world, lovable characters and a message that still sticks with me to this day. And just like all good movies, it got a tie-in video game, a weird situation where its connection to the movie is in name only. This game is one of the weirdest video games based on a movie, since it has little to nothing to do with the movie in both tone and story. So let's talk about why the Meet the Robinsons game is weird. Now the plot of the game is very different to the plot of the movie, like very different. First of all, Lewis isn't the main character in this game, instead it's Wilbur, and the game seems to take place before the movie and acts as a prequel of sorts. So the game starts off in King Tut's tomb. Yes, really? And Wilbur is trying to get a photo of him and King Tut's body to add to his photo collection, and in doing so accidentally sets off a trap that caused the whole tomb to collapse, and after escaping he heads back to the future in the soon-to-be-stolen time machine. And after a wild goose chase of trying to figure out who changed the code to the garage door, it leads into the catalyst for all of the events in the movie, the part where Wilbur foolishly neglects to lock the garage door and the bowler hat guy steals the time machine to go back in time and ruin Lewis' future. And while you would think the game would be all about Wilbur trying to find the bowler hat guy and trying to get the time machine back like in the movie, it's instead about Wilbur trying to fix a terrible future he accidentally created. An apocalyptic future with a giant volcano in the middle of the city and giant robotic ants. Yes, this is really the plot of the Meet the Robinsons game, and basically Wilbur has to first set the future right before continuing on his quest to stop the bowler hat guy and get the time machine back. You find out some really shocking, but also believable truths on this terrible future and how you correct it. The story and tone of this game is way different than the movie, to the point where it feels like a completely different thing besides the characters and world and the vague connections to the first movie's story. There's nothing about this game that feels like Meet the Robinsons. It feels more like a spin-off idea that somebody had, but because the movie failed financially, Disney just recycled it for this game. The story isn't bad or anything. In fact, I like a lot of the ideas and concepts it presents, and it would make for an amazing movie, but it feels weird and incredibly jarring going from this to this. As for the controls, they're okay but kinda awkward. Just like the ant bully, you can't jump whenever you want. Instead you have to run to an area and then the game will jump for you. You can still attack with the same button as you always do with these types of games. You get a large plethora of gadgets you can use. There's the disassembler you find in the storage room that disassembles everything. The charge ball glove you can use to charge up power outlets and take out enemies. The Havoc gloves, which you can use to blast really heavy things and dig into Havoc glove seals, which you'll have to do to progress. And the levitation ray you get at Magma Industries in your final attempt to fix the future. There's also the scanner you can use to scan multiple things, but I don't consider that a weapon, it's more of a tool. You can also dodge by holding down R2 and flicking the left analog stick. There's a whole section dedicated to showing you this. You can also aim your charge ball glove, and your target will highlight 2 or 3 items, and when you fire it'll ricochet and hit all 3 targets. The controls themselves are not great and are very flawed, but still get the job done. The graphics were done by Avalanche Software, who previously did the Chicken Little game, and I'm not a huge fan. The characters and backgrounds look like the movie just fine, but there's something awkward and off about them. I don't know what it is. It lacks the energy and movement of the movie, and the facial expressions and overall dialogue leave a lot to be desired. They're not the worst graphics, but they still lack in a lot of areas. The levels themselves are a lot of fun, especially the third level as you explore through the Robinson basement to get to the other time machine. The levels in the future with the robotic ants and giant volcano are very creative and fun to play through, and the boss battles like the Robot Guardian, the Queen Ant, Prometheus, and oddly enough Giant Doris, which is odd and completely out of nowhere since this game has mostly followed its own narrative and hasn't in any way taken any inspiration from the movie to craft its levels. I guess they just wanted you to fight the main villain of the movie, since this is still the Meet the Robinsons game, but it doesn't really make any sense in the context of the story, since that would imply the bowler hat guy succeeded in ruining Lewis' future, and therefore Wilbur shouldn't exist. I know that we still have to have Wilbur exist because we need him to defeat the final boss. But come on, you could at least make it happen in literally any other way other than the exact same way it happened in the movie, and after that the game finally ends with Wilbur going back in time to complete his mission, and thus leading us into the events of the movie. Futuristic catastrophe and all. This game is weird and I don't know what they were thinking. Overall guys, Meet the Robinsons. The game is very odd in its relation to the movie. It has very little to do with the movie it's based on, and aside from a few things you couldn't tell if this is Meet the Robinsons or not, since it very rarely emulates the same energy and tone of the movie, and the story, while creative and interesting, doesn't really complement the movie or really make any sense when you consider what it's supposed to be taking place before: giant volcano, robotic ants. This all took place before the events of the movie? Really? It's honestly very hard to believe and incredibly bizarre when compared to how airtight the movie's narrative was. The movie knew what it was: a fun, quirky comedy about a boy genius who travels to the future and realizes what he wants is not too far off. This is honestly the perfect example of being too ambitious. It has way too many ideas and tries to balance them and make them flow in a satisfying way, but at the end of the day, it just leaves you feeling confused and unsatisfied. It's literally Wilbur fixing the horrific future, and then after you fight giant Doris. That's it. There's very little to this game when you really think about it, and I feel like they could have added a few extra levels to the game that would have helped it flow better. But it's just a weird, obscure tie-in game to a movie that is very dear to my heart and I still love to this very day. It's not terrible by any means, but it's certainly not the video game that the movie truly deserves. The Meet the Robinsons game is weird. Anyways guys, what do you think? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you guys later.